Alright, guys. So, the next one. This is the big one. So, I am looking at question 17 and question 24. So, question 17 is, describe the best compliment you've had while gaming. And 24 is, which RPG do you think deserves greater recognition? The greatest compliment I think I've ever gotten is when I take completely new players, or people completely new to Rollmaster. Sometimes it's my friends, sometimes it's at a convention. Sometimes when it's my friends, they're even completely new to role-playing. And after that first or second session, or that first convention slot, they're like, yeah, I get this game. I get it. I understand it. This is cool. Not that I made the game, right? If I was to use a bunch of identities to identify me as a person, one of the top ones, not the top one, but one of the top ones would be teacher. Since I was in the 4th grade, 1984, I wanted to be a teacher. And it was from there all the way through to like 1 month before I got my education degree that I wanted to be a teacher. Then I didn't want to be a professional teacher anymore, but I've always loved teaching. Like nowadays, I'm a board game teacher, right? And I teach role-playing games when the time comes up, when I have the opportunity. You know, I'm the kind of person that when I know I'm gonna be playing games with some friends, like we keep meeting people who aren't introduced to the large, wide world of board gaming, and I know that we're gonna be hanging out with them tomorrow night. A couple couples, Ribbit and I, and we're gonna introduce some games to them. And Ribbit and I have already talked about what games we're gonna bring. I'm working through my head when I'm lying in bed or taking a shower, or whatever, the steps that I'm going to take to teach them the game. I'm thinking about what knowledge builds on top of which knowledge, what advice or knowledge is going to get in the way from them understanding the game, like what needs to be held off until it's relevant to teach them. Is there something I do need to teach them ahead of time, like in Suburbia, it has an A phase, a B phase, and a C phase, and I tell people, hey, you want to switch from making money to making point. Like at first you want to start off making money, worry about that first. And then somewhere in the B phase, it's up to you, you want to switch from making money to making points. And you're going to feel that's much smoother, because the experience if they do one or the other is a little less than fun. I'm thinking about these things. I'm thinking about how do I teach so my consistent and repetitive success with introducing people to Rollmaster is the best compliment, right? It's like, I'm doing a good job and you're having fun from it. That's great. Like, I get to share something I enjoy and you've enjoyed it too. That's great. That to me, that's one of the best compliments. Secondary answer, by the way, would be in my convention game, which actually does one large story part in 4 parts. So it's like one con slot is one story, and then another con slot, and another con slot kind of thing. Is when they end one and they're like, I want to know what another one is. Like, okay, that's good. Okay, so I've written a decent story here. At least the bait of it is interesting. Which goes to which RPG do I think deserves greater recognition? Guess what? It's Rollmaster. Who watches this channel, or has, if you're new here, go through my channel history, you won't be surprised, right? It's Rollmaster. I think it deserves more recognition because of all of the flack that it gets from people. Rollmaster, ROLL, Chartmaster, rules master, blah, 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 blah. I think it deserves greater recognition because, and maybe this is maybe this is part of teaching. Because I've sat in front of games and you're talking about board games again because this is I feel like this is sort of connected through a personality and skill aspect. There are people who are just horrible at teaching board games, right? Like they're jumping from concept to concept and they're describing something. They're telling you a rule that talks about something else, but they haven't described that yet, and then they go into something else instead of describing this thing here. They don't understand how knowledge and understanding is built, right? Like they don't understand pedagogy. Pedagogy? I can spell it. I can't say it, apparently. Right? The study of learning, the science of learning. Like they don't understand it. They don't know how to present it to you. Their mind is all over the place, right? And I feel like that is what the experience people have had with Rolemaster, right? It is physically a large system. Like the books aren't very large, but the books are freaking dense with words, right? And honestly, the Rolemaster 2 book, not put together, in my opinion, in front to back order very well. And the first copy of Rolemaster Unified I got as a beta was not put together in the best order. So if you get someone who doesn't present it well, you're going to come away like, gosh, I was constantly making rolls, or gosh, I had 50 bazillion, the GM's just constantly flipping between 50 bazillion tables and this and that and this and that, and it's like, so maybe that's part of it, but guys, it's not that bad. It's not like that, right? Like my players have 2 or 3, maybe 4 tables that they keep track of, and like that they personally have, and sure. Is that more than any other system out there? Pretty much. Pretty much. Like a comparative statement, right? Is it more? Yes, it's more. Does it interrupt play? No, it does not. It does not interrupt play, right? Now, I'm going to get to this later, but this might be a thing where style and taste come into play, right? If you were completely, well, I guess I'm going to get to it right now. If you're a completely narrative person, then Rolemaster's going to feel like the tables get in the way, right? Because you just want to describe how these things happen. But Rolemaster's not narrative, it's simulationist, right? Like it leans more in that kind of field, where it's not leaving it up to you to describe what happened, but giving it to you. I mean, you can always describe it alternatively or beyond that, but it starts with, hey, here's a description of the injury or whatever, right? So you could always, like for instance, you've got someone prone on your lap and you go to cut their throat and you roll on the slicing critical, the slash critical table, and the description, I had this happen in a game, and the description reads something about slicing their Achilles. And I actually had them or was it me or was it the other GM? I can't remember, the player stumbles or the other person starts running away, and they basically did something Deus Ex Machina way, or maybe that's not a really good description, but they did something narrative to make the table result, the narrative in the table result fit. I wouldn't suggest doing that, and I don't think that there's anything in the rules of Rolemaster, rules as written, that says that you have to, right? So, but that's still the kind of style it is, right? Like that the base description is there, not for you to make up, but starting here in the mechanics. So, let's say you're just a fighter with a broadsword. Then you'll have the broadsword attack table, the slash critical table, and quite possibly the crush critical table. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you won't have the crush critical table, and you'll just use your friends next to you who's using a mace, and he's got the crush critical table, and you'll just use his when it's necessary. But the tables are easy to use, right? It's Look, I'm sorry, like, do some 2 to 3 digit simple math for addition, and I've already told you what armor type the enemy is. You look it up there. You read that. If you scored a critical, then you go to the critical table and you roll a result there. And some people may say, well, you could say here's the roll master part, right? That you've rolled an attack. Maybe it was open-ended, so you roll again. That all gets added up to your attack. You've definitely scored a critical then, so then you roll again for a critical. Look, folks, that's 3 rolls. If you look at a standard OSR game, you got 2 rolls. That's only 1 more roll, and that's assuming you get that 5% chance for an open-ended roll. It's not all that different, right? And in a classic OSR game, you're going to roll D20 to hit, and if you hit, you're going to get some other dice and roll that for damage. It's not more, right? So the names, the jokes, they don't fit. They're slander almost, right? Like it just doesn't make sense to me. If you look at Rollmaster 2 in particular, do you consult lots of charts for character generation or leveling? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely you do. That's just character generation though, right? That's not play, that's character generation. If you expect to show up at a game new and not have a character made and be in the session that night, that's not Rollmaster, for sure. That is not part of the system. But, I mean, I know Rollmaster is a fatal system, but character generation is usually a very minor part of your experience with a role-playing system, right? It's an influential part, don't get me wrong. It's certainly an influential part, but it's a minor part as far as time goes, right? You're usually spending more time in the character than creating the character, as far as like mechanical rules go. So I think it deserves greater recognition because it gets a lot of flack that I don't feel is very accurate. If you feel like it's accurate and you can really like point to your experience and go, this was accurate, then either one, you have a very non-simulationist bent which says, why would I want to look up that table? Okay, fair. Then this isn't the system for you. That, or you had a bad GM, frankly, a GM who taught it poorly, right? Maybe they're new, maybe they're not good teachers. That's all possible. No shame. But don't put it on the system. Put it where it belongs, which is bad experience, not smooth learning. It's not on the system. It's not on the system. The system's good, and I think it deserves greater recognition in all of its forms. I'm not a fan of all of the forms because I prefer one side of mechanics or the other, right? Like I don't prefer Rollmaster standard system compared to Rollmaster 2/Classic. But if the only Rollmaster books I ever had access to were Rollmaster standard system, you bet your bottom dollar I'd be picking up a set. So, and I think that this is how it kind of ties into 17. I think it is about how you're taught and how you're introduced to it. If you don't have a good teacher, nothing that you're taught is necessarily going to be all that great, right? That's kind of my thing on it. My favorite board game is Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition, which lasts 6 to 8 hours. Out of the numerous people I've introduced the game to, I've only ever had one person walk away unhappy. One. I've had people who go, that was a fun experience, but I'm not going to get 6 to 8 hours worth of time that I can play board games regularly enough to really spend more time in this game. Fair point. But that is because I really feel it's because it's a good game and I teach it well, right? It's a good game that has some foreboding appearance to it. And it takes a good teacher to get past that foreboding appearance to say, hey, this is actually the nice, juicy chocolate core of the thing, right? So I think it deserves greater recognition because if you're just going to fly by the seat of your pants as you're GMing, and I don't mean like creating stuff on the fly story-wise, I mean learning rules, yeah. Good fat luck having people have a good experience with that. It's not going to happen. It takes an experienced GM. And obviously we all can't start as experienced GMs. But the point is, people don't like it because either things they've heard or I think from bad experience. Mostly from what I've seen, it's only what they hear. They don't even have personal experience with a well-structured GM who's a good teacher introducing them to them for the first time. All right, being able to answer the questions, give them enough speed, not pile on too much data because it is simulation sided, right? So it has a decent number of data in it, a decent amount of data in it. It can, and if you're used to a character sheet that takes up half to one side of a piece of paper, and you receive a character sheet that's 3 pages long, like 3 sides of pages long, maybe 4, you might be like, what's all this? You know. That's my soapbox, right? Like, I saw this question, I was just like, oh boy, here we go. Because what system deserves greater recognition? Rollmaster does. The charts aren't that bad. The tables are not that bad. They're not that frequent. It gives you so much versatility, so much latitude from a setting decision and from a character concept decision. From that point of view, it gives you lots of latitude as long as your GM is giving you that latitude, right? Yeah, I mean, other than having endurance systems that no one ever, or encumbrance system that no one ever seems to want to put into place, no matter what they do with it, I can't think of anything particularly bad about it. Again, if you're into simulation. If you're really heavily against simulation, then this isn't the game for you, right? But something I wanted to say earlier is, you might say, oh my gosh, 5 tables or charts for character creation, that's way too much for me. 2 to 4 tables is too much for me because I'm a more narrative person. That's fine. I would still say that's fine for your preferences, and that's totally cool. But that's not necessarily a lot for a simulation side heavy system. Does that make sense? Like, if I guess what I'm saying is, if you judge it on a curve, is a little bit what I'm saying. And I don't always judge on curves. So I understand, not judging on a curve. But if you look at it as a curve, there aren't necessarily a lot of, there are a lot of tables in other systems. I guess if I'm trying to think of the Morrow project, I don't know that there were actually a lot of tables in that system, and it was really simulationist. There was just a lot of data, like straight up data. There weren't a lot of random or cross-referenced things. It was just straight up reference, right? Like, this weapon has this range and this caliber ammo and does this for damage, right? Just that. That's how it did its simulation. Not through using tables. So I'm not. Maybe it is heavy maybe it is table heavy for a simulation system. But that's just how they chose to use it. And like I said, like you just kind of go through it. Like, once you understand what each table is for, it doesn't really impede play or impede your creativity or anything else like that. But those are the important things for role playing, I think. Right? Like, does it impede play? Does it impede designing the kind of character you want? No, the tables and charts, they don't. So, I don't know. I'm going to breathe here. That's my soapbox. Which one do I think deserves greater recognition? Rollmaster. And this isn't as friendly as positive of a topic because I feel like it needs greater recognition because it has been maligned. Because some people talk about it and they hear the talk about it and they don't actually go out there and experience it for themselves. And they don't make sure that they're getting it from a good source. Experience it for yourself. Go get a good source. There you go. If you don't feel like you're getting it taught well, then don't consider that a good source, right? Like, just find a good teacher. I'm going to go with that. Done.